Hello, Sanibonani, Molweni, Dumera, Lojani, Awasheni, Vanakkam, and good evening, esteemed guests, colleagues, friends, and fellow advocates for justice. My name is Devotion Modlivira, and I will be the moderator for this event. As we gathered this month, this Women's Month, a time dedicated to celebrate the indomitable spirit and immense contributions of women, our hearts turn to a woman whose courage shone brighter than any star, Babita Deokaran. Babita was more than just a public servant. She was a guardian of integrity, a bulwark against the tide of corruption that threatens the very fabric of our society. Her commitment to truth, accountability, and the well being of the ordinary citizen was unwavering. In a world too often shadowed by deceit, she chose to illuminate the path, to stand firm, and to speak out, even when her voice was a solitary one. Her tragic death was not just a loss to her family and friends, but a profound loss for every individual who believes in a just and equitable nation. Her sacrifice serves as a chilling reminder of the perils faced by those who dare to expose wrongdoing. Yet it also ignites an unyielding fire within us to continue her fight. This Women's Month, as we reflect on the struggles and triumphs of women, let us remember Babita Deokaran not just as a victim, but as a warrior, a woman who exemplified the truth, integrity, and moral fortitude that define the best of humanity. This event would not also be possible without another exceptional lady, Prof. Pagala Pillay. Prof. Pillay is the director for CERUS and professor at the School of Public Leadership within Stellenbosch University. We thank her for allowing us to hold this important event today. We have a jam-packed session today, so I'll get right to it. Our first speaker is Prof. Ndevu. Prof. Ndevu is the current director of the School of Public Leadership at the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences at Stellenbosch University. He is also the academic head of the BCom Honors in Public and Development Management. Over to you, Prof. Ndevu, for the address. Prof. Ndevu, over to you. Okay, so we can go to the next speaker until Prof. Ndevu comes in. If you can have the welcome address by Prof. Scott. Prof. Scott is a distinguished public administration scholar and practitioner currently serving as Secretary General of APAM and Professor Extraordinary at Stellenbosch University. Over to you, Prof. Scott.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, partners, participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our series of the Stellenbosch University, the African Association for Public Administration and Management, the African International Policy Research Center, and all other partners of this webinar, it is my honor and privilege to welcome all of you to this solemn yet inspiring webinar with the theme, The Indomitable Spirit of Babita Deokaran, Honoring Women of Integrity. Today, we gather not only to remember, but also to reflect, to learn, and to renew our collective commitment to integrity in governance. By commemorating the life and legacy of Babita Deokaran, a courageous whistleblower whose integrity cost her life. We elevate the voices of women whose bravery and conscience continue to shape South Africa and the whole of Africa's democratic journey. Today's theme challenges us to remember those who have paid the ultimate price for truth, to interrogate the systemic vulnerabilities that enable corruption, and to rededicate ourselves to building institutions that protect and empower women of conscience. As APAM, together with our partners of this webinar, and also with the various women groups on this continent, we believe strongly that the struggle against corruption and the pursuit of integrity is deeply connected to the broader fight for gender equality and empowerment. Corruption is not just an economic crime, it is a moral and social injustice that disproportionately affects women and vulnerable groups. Honorable women like Babita is therefore more than a remembrance. It is a call for action, a pledge to advance transparent, accountable, and gender-responsive governance. Today, ladies and gentlemen, through this webinar, we are reminded that integrity is not abstract. It is lived and embodied. Women across Africa and the world stand on the front lines of accountability, whether as activists, whether as policymakers, whether as administrators, or whether they are community leaders. Their courage lies the path forward, and it is our responsibility to amplify their voices, protect their contributions, and replicate their spirit of resilience across our societies. This webinar is very significant, not only as a tribute, but also as a platform for dialogue and solutions. We must commit to actionable strategies that dismantle systemic corruption, strengthen institutional safeguards, and create safe, enabling environments for women of integrity to thrive. Together, through collaboration, advocacy, and innovation, we can ensure that Babita's legacy lives on, not in words alone, but in transformed systems and just societies. In closing, allow me to extend my deepest gratitude to our esteemed speakers, our committed partners, and all participants who have made time to join us in this important conversation. Your presence today reflects a shared resolve to champion integrity, protect truth tellers, and build institutions that honor courage over compromise. On this note, once again, on behalf of all of us, our partners and organizers of this webinar, I welcome all of you to this webinar and wish all of us a fruitful deliberations as you honor the indomitable spirit of Babita Deokaran and all women of integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Scott. I hand you over again to Prof. Ndevu to give in the opening address. Prof. Ndevu?
Program Director, colleagues who are in this particular meeting, good afternoon to everyone. Let me firstly apologize for the glitches. Technology is good when it works, and when it doesn't work, it gives you challenges. It can even embarrass you. As we begin to close or wind off the month of August, which in most of our countries is the Women's Month, we come again together to celebrate the bravery. We come together to celebrate the boldness of one of our own, Miss Babita Deokaran. I know her family is here in this particular meeting. I also want to welcome them to this particular occasion. This should be an occasion that we all reflect on the role that has been played by women in society generally, and more especially in issues pertaining to integrity and accountability. Babita Deokaran symbolized or resembles what strength of women are. A woman who stood for what was important for not only her, but for a country, to ensure that there is accountability, there is value for money in the use of resources. It is not only for women that she stood for, but she stood for all citizens of South Africa, and more especially those that are vulnerable and marginalized and use public health institutions. As we celebrate her life, as we reflect on the struggle of women generally, especially when it comes to corruption, we should reflect on what are the lessons that needs to be learned from this and what we should take forward. And I think one of the things that we should be at the foremost of any lessons that would happen today would be around integrity, ensuring that those that are given responsibility to lead in the public service lead with integrity, especially at a time when our economies are not growing, at a time when many of our people in the continent and worldwide are struggling to find meaningful jobs. It is important that we have people in the public service that would act with integrity at all times. We should also ensure that we empower women as we close this month of August. We ensure that we don't only empower them in terms of giving them a seat on the table, but we give them space to be able to lead more effectively and efficiently. In those few words, ma'am, I know I've beyond your time. I want to say thank you so much, and we welcome everyone. Looking forward to the timely engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Ndevo, for that kind words. We now have a very special keynote address by Babita Deokaran's brother, Rakesh Deokaran. I will hand you over to Rakesh Deokaran, who will provide a reflection of Babita Deokaran's legacy. Over to you, Rakesh.
I don't know what to say to all of you that on this on the webinar, whatever the case may be. But we're grateful for all of you guys. And one special request from me is for Salosh, properly. All right? So she's a woman of integrity. And thanks to her, I'm on this webinar. Thanks to her. And when it comes to integrity, it's not about women, it's men as well. Integrity. We just, all Babita would have said to you guys is, let's move this country forward, guys. Let's move it forward. We have everything and anything in this country. And that would have been her words. Yes, she lost. I can't say lost. And one thing about her is she stood and she will die for this country. And that is her. And I don't speak on behalf of my family, I speak on behalf of her. Even my family, they would tell you she was a person of proper integrity in this country. And I'm going to close my statement. Mr. President, this is my words to you. Babita wants the truth and nothing but the truth. Those hitmen did not hire themselves. We want to know who hired them and who put the bullet in her. Not bullet, there were so many. And it angers me when I speak. And Mr. President, if you're not going to listen, somebody is going to school you. And that somebody is going to be one of us, one of our children, one of our young ones. I call them the young ones. They will school you. Thank you for your time, Divash.
Thank you, Rakesh. And we all want justice to be done and served on Babita's life.
Yes.
Thank you for the kind words. And yes?
Hence, I brought the president. You need to come to the front of the class now. You cannot sit
Yes.
behind the classroom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in and to present a few words on behalf of the Babita family. We are with
And
you.
once again, I will reiterate, Prof. Salosh, we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rakesh. So now we go to the next agenda item. It's a panel discussion with two whistleblowers of South Africa and two legal experts and also a leader in the public administration space. Our first speaker is Ms. Sarah Berger, and she will be speaking on her trials and tribulations as a whistleblower in South Africa, highlighting her experience, the retaliation that she experienced during her journey as a whistleblower, and also as a resilient woman of South Africa. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Dee. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me here as well. Where do you begin? You know, years ago, I worked as a recruiter. I'm now an attorney. And I came across a lady that I'd worked with in the pharmaceutical industry for many years. She lost her job because she blew the whistle on senior management. And probably about 2 or 3 years later, her CV still circulated on the recruiting platforms because she couldn't seek or she couldn't find employment because she blew the whistle. I couldn't understand that because the connotation with the word whistleblower, in my mind, as a lay person, was a positive thing. You know, you were doing the right thing. You were acting and living with integrity, as Prof. Scott said. But fast forward many years, and I was studying part-time whilst recruiting as well and supporting myself. And I found myself in a similar situation. I had to choose to do what was right versus what was expedient at the time. What was I doing? I was conducting many investigations for various clients, but a prominent client was the University of Fort Hare. And what saddened me about doing those investigations, as it did, I'm sure, the professors that work in our firm as well, is that places of higher education inspire hope. They give you the opportunity to go from a recruiter to an attorney, to become somebody important in life and be able to take care of yourself as a woman, as opposed to the traditional paternal standards that we all grew up in, or most of us. So you're conducting your investigations, and that was the day-to-day life. I was probably in the region of around 62 investigations for one university, and there were various schemes that were taking place there. Registrar's department, people selling degrees to students. There were scams with fake invoices to sell catering and T-shirts and events and so forth, into the millions of rands. And then, of course, there is the famous story about the alleged ghostwriting team that was in the public admin department, facilitated by one professor and a team of alleged ghostwriters, which was selling shelf proposals to politicians in the Eastern Cape. Now, that's still very much a live investigation, which our company and myself took great pride in working on, not to destroy people's lives, but to bring the excellence back into the University of Fort Hare, which is what it is meant to be, a place of higher learning, a place of excellence. So those investigations, and how did I land up knowing that that was the reason that cost me my freedom at the time? Well, on the 28th of March last year, I was just doing my job, drafting reports and getting ready for a nice Easter weekend that I was going to spend in my garden and with my family. And armed men came into my office.
Take your time, Sarah, take your time.
Sorry. With R5 rifles and balaclavas and stun grenades, and told me that I was now a fraud and corruption accused. Bearing in mind that the charges that would be associated with the alleged ghostwriting team in relation to the politicians as well as the professor would have also been fraud and corruption. They kept me there for several hours, packing up the 6 years worth of work that we had conducted for the university into evidence bags and photographing. That was 10 o'clock in the morning. By 7 o'clock that night, 9 hours later, and in my view, a plan in order to ensure that no bail application could be brought as an attorney. I was then detained with my colleague at a police station, with our lawyers being told that they could visit us tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. But by 7 o'clock the next morning, we were sped away in blue light brigade fashion to the airport in Cape Town, but not to the regular section, a private section where we were put on a jet, handcuffed and foot shackled, and flown to the Eastern Cape. We laid for days in cells with human waste on the walls and centimeters worth of water and flickering lights because the electricity was affected by the heavy rains in the Eastern Cape. And all I did for those days was lay on a gym mattress outside with a scratchy blanket, trying to piece together in my mind how this all came about and what I had done wrong. And it dawned on me, as it dawned on my colleague, as we later discussed and debriefed, that the reports that we had conducted on the politicians receiving these alleged shelf degrees had remained dormant for a number of years. They were released already in June 21. The difference now was that we did the right thing. We asked the SIU to come in. We helped and supported draft the SIU's proclamation for them to come in and do the proper investigative work and look into all of these allegations on a larger scale and with more capacity and with more powers, subpoena powers. It was only then when the SIU started sort of scratching around and asking questions that things started blowing up. And the Premier of the Eastern Cape sought to bring an interdict against the SIU on part 1, successful, as well as part 2, but didn't plan that we were already planning in the background to extend the proclamation. Now, that was in November 23. During around the same period, we received a warning from the SIU to say that there were certain people that were unhappy with our investigations, but they were going to continue to do it. We also received warnings that there was political interference that was taking place and that there were certain people unhappy about it because of the leading party's stronghold in the Eastern Cape, with Mabiyane heading it up. We didn't heed those. And you know why? Because we lived with integrity. We knew that the work was solid, that there was no way that we were going to put something in a report that was not factual, that was not the truth. But I wasn't worried because it was with law enforcement, with various bodies from the Hawks to the SIU to the NPA. So I did nothing. February 24, 4 months later, I get a visit from the Hawks and the NPA, and they say to me, look, we need to discuss these matters. The professor that allegedly stole 5 million rand and the shelf degrees and the ghostwriting team. There was very little appetite to take it forward, which was disappointing to me because to me, a degree has got a far greater capability of status and money than simply stealing money does. It offers you a lifetime of wealth, potential wealth and status. Sorry. And so we spent 3 days hashing this out about the professor and the shelf degrees. And they left with a sense of confidence that we would take this matter forward. A few weeks later, on the 28th of March, I was arrested. So a whirlwind journey happened in my mind and I realized why I was there. But then to my surprise, when I was at my bail hearing, there were politicians present in the courtroom, in the incorrect courtroom, no doubt, no less. I was meant to be in East London, and I was in fact in Dimbaza with the biggest camera crews and university staff members and Becky Kele and the head of crime intelligence and Fanya Masemola and all his deputies. And it dawned on me that what we had exposed must have way, way deeper roots than what we can ever imagine. I suppose we'll have to wait and see when the SIU's report comes out. But what happened to us in this period of time was that We were arrested, we were detained. People don't understand the repercussions that that has for you. As an attorney, of course, your reputation is everything. You protect it with your life. If you were a businessman, you would do that too. It's the only asset that keeps businesses alive is reputation and integrity. So the knock-on effect was forensic institutions suspending us, colleagues leaving us, family members not wanting to see us. And so you sort of get beaten around in the waves each day. And I suppose I'll just jump straight into how I dealt with it. When you're dealt a set of life circumstances, you don't get the hymn book to go with it. You don't get the playbook, much like a mother that has a child. You get books, but you're not going to get the full book on how to, or the operation manual for this. So you take it and you realize to yourself that in the ordinary course, you would dream in months and weeks and years at a time. But because there are so many blows that come with being a whistleblower and the constant onslaught day by day, you decide very quickly that you will take everything moment by moment. I can't say that everybody would have reacted in the same manner that I did. I come from a family where my mother was a single mother with 3 children, and she wrote a very strong story of how you survive and you are resilient in the toughest of times. So I have to attribute me watching her growing up to a lot of my own resilience in the matter. But bite by bite, it's what they say about, how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. But looking forward now, one thing that I can tell you is that retaliation versus resilience. Resilience is now taking the matter forward and calling for accountability going forward. And again, just to end off on what Prof. Scott said, which is really such a powerful phrase, integrity is lived. We can only make choices day by day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for sharing your experience. I do know that it was very emotional, but you are a brave soul, and thank you for standing up for the rights.
Thank
Our
you.
next speaker is Ms. Askar Adidiri. She is a distinguished advocate, legal scholar, and policy practitioner with more than 15 years of progressive experience in international law, human rights, humanitarian law, and corporate legal practice. For the viewers, the Q&A session will be held at the end of the panel discussion. So hold your thoughts and we will get to you. Over to you, Askar.
Thank you, Devasha. Good evening, everyone. Of course, it was really interesting to hear from you, Sarah. And, what we will come to, or what we actually conclude from that, is that whistleblowing is something that is both urgent and deeply personal to the African continent. We often celebrate grand ideals of democracy, accountability, transparency, integrity, but these values do not come alive in institutions and laws alone. No, they live and breathe through people. People who choose to speak up when silence is safer. People who put their jobs, reputations, their families, and sometimes even their lives on the line for the greater good. I'm here to kind of lay down the legal landscape in regards to whistleblowing or the whistleblower protection in Africa. But let me first lay down the whistleblower landscape in Africa in itself. For us in Africa, whistleblowing is not an imported concept. No. It has deep roots here in our African traditions of communal accountability, where speaking out against wrongdoers has always been a part of safeguarding the collective. And even today, in modern governance, it's indispensable in fighting corruption, of course, safeguarding the public funds, as well as defending human rights abuses and so on. But yet, we can see across Africa that corruption, mismanagement, human rights abuses are or remain very stubborn challenges. So in this landscape, we cannot say anything but whistleblowers are vital. They are key. They are actually often the first line of defense for public interest. However, they remain exposed to harassment, dismissal, and social ostracism, and sometimes violence, as you have heard from Ms. Sarah. So now when we're talking about whistleblowers, why do we place special focus on women whistleblowers? Because in addition to all these things that I just said affect whistleblowers in general, they're actually affected by gender-specific threats in addition to that. Like I can say, for example, they face defamation of character, slut shaming, exclusions from male-dominated professional networks, as well as there is a culture of disbelief that dismiss the voices of women whistleblowers. And because their voices are often overlooked, this causes a problem, especially that their interventions are normally affecting or indirect impact or affecting matters that are indirect impact to communities, such as healthcare, education, and social services. And of course, as we know, women whistleblowers do not only challenge corruption, but they also challenge the patriarchy itself. Speaking out challenges expectations that a woman is supposed to be silent, to remain silent, to avoid public controversy. And in patriarchal workplaces, you could actually see that women who come and speak up are considered either troublemakers or attention seekers. So we can see that women require more protection, or at least special protection. Additionally, if we just look around in our African world, there has been a lot of research and a lot of studies. For instance, the Transparency International Africa has shown us that women are less likely to report corruption. Of course, not because women are less ethical, no, but rather because the personal costs to a woman is much higher than that to a man. For a woman, speaking up can and does trigger gender-specific retaliation. And as I told you some, but there are many more, like accusations of promiscuity, online harassment, physical violence, and the list goes on. That is only specific to women and gender-specific to women threats. There have been a few workshops in Liberia where the women participants have actually reported that fear of sexualized retaliation is the #1 deterrent to blowing the whistle. And of course, there have been such studies elsewhere, including Kenya and Nigeria, and they have highlighted that women are afraid or less likely to blow the whistle because they face dismissal from their jobs without any severance and defamation in the press and so on. So it appears from that the law does not adequately respond to these gendered risks, and existing whistleblower statutes are gender neutral, like written as if men and women face the same consequences for disclosure, but that is in fact not true, and that is not the reality that we are in today. So given that we have, or women have different requirements, the law must reflect that. However, now let's look at the law and whether actually whistleblowing for men or women is actually properly protected in our legal systems within Africa. So if we look at the legal landscape in Africa, if we start from the top down, let's look at the African Union. The African Union itself does recognize protection for whistleblowers. And in the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption of 2003, we will see that the convention obliges states to protect informants as well as witnesses. However, here we are, 2 decades later, with very few African countries who have passed or enacted comprehensive whistleblower protection laws. Very few countries like South Africa has, Nigeria, Ghana as well. They have taken meaningful steps to pass legislations, but others or the majority remain silent. And some have laws that are so weak that they offer very limited real life or real world protection. But even where laws exist, we have also seen and noticed that they are often poorly enforced. So what can be done? Thankfully, our African scholars and practitioners are not silent in this regard. They have proposed very meaningful reforms. And I think I will just go through what I think are the 3 best models or the 3 best steps to follow that will guide us into how to strengthen this protection for whistleblowers. First and foremost, I think, of course, we need to strengthen the legal frameworks as well as utilize independent oversight. So if we're going to learn from the models that are already here in the African continent, for instance, how about we study the partial lessons obtained from the South Africa's Protected Disclosures Act of 2000, which of course this act is hailed as pioneering, as it was one of the first acts that was enacted in this regard. But nonetheless, Babita's case showed us its limitations. It has failed to fully protect Babita, and the legal text is, of course, meaningless without strong enforcement. And however, South Africa is showing us that it's trying to improve. There has been a 2022 review. Legal scholars recommended targeted reforms, which are actually very excellent and other African countries should actually follow lead in this regard. First, they have suggested that independent whistleblower agencies must be formed. And that is actually that's excellent, as if we are assuming that the person is supposed to report to the same agency that is implicated in the wrongdoing, then this protection is actually absent or is non-existent. And this panel, the South African Legal Scholars Panel, has also advised that we have fast-track witness protection programs, and of course that is in itself very necessary, and special compensation for whistleblowers. Again, this is something very necessary. But most importantly, I think they also called for gender-sensitive procedures. Gender-sensitive procedures are very important. I will talk to them about some details in the next point, but they are very important. As I said, females are in a specific position that they are facing more risks or more threats. So basically, at this point, what we need laws that are clear, laws that are gender sensitive, laws that are enforceable, and independent bodies that receive and act on the disclosures. So this can be learned from our experience with South African law or act. Okay, and the second point is ensuring anonymity and safe channels. Of course, whistleblowers are facing retaliation precisely because their identities are exposed. In this instance, I think the best idea is to have secure digital platforms, for instance, anonymous hotlines and independent reporting mechanisms. These can offer an extra layer of protection. Initiatives like that have been piloted in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, and Uganda, but of course, they are not in full force and they need broader institutional support. Nigeria has also piloted a hybrid approach known as the integrity hotlines and anonymous online reporting systems. They are not perfect, but they illustrate how technology can actually bypass male-dominated office hierarchies, giving women safer channels or avenues to speak. And the third mode would be cultural change and public solidarity. Legal reform alone, like we talked about just now, is not enough. It does not suffice. Whistleblowers thrive on cultures that view them as guardians of the public interest, not as traitors, not as spies. Civil society and the media and even the community leaders should come together and help change the narrative. We should celebrate whistleblowers rather than vilifying them. I think using these three modes, we will be going on the way forward. So what I like mostly about this and what's giving me hope is that many of the best solutions are coming from within Africa itself, African solutions for African realities, and the growing recognition that whistleblowers are essential to our democracy, to our development as a country and as a continent. We are beginning to actually see a shift. We can see that laws are being tested in courts. Activists are actually mobilizing around whistleblower cases. And even the African Union is taking up conversations, meaningful conversations about transparency and accountability. So I think I can see that this situation is hopeful. While, of course, the journey is long, the direction is promising. Okay, let me end by returning to where I began. The women who embody courage. Let us remember Babita Deokaran, whose sacrifice reminds us of the real stakes of whistleblowing. Let us remember the many unnamed African women, nurses, teachers, civil servants, as well as journalists who take risks every day to expose wrongdoing in their communities. They show us that bravery is not about the absence of fear, but rather about action in spite of it. So please, when we think about whistleblower protections, let us not only debate the laws and the policies, let us honor the women who embody integrity, who challenge corruption and patriarchy at once, and who prove that ethical leadership is the truest form of power. Thank you.
Thank you, Askar. That was really, really wonderful. And especially the point around gender-specific policies for addressing whistleblower protection. I think we need that to try and address the scourge and the retaliation that women whistleblowers experience when they blow the whistle or expose wrongdoing. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dorothy Mushi. She is currently the Managing Director at Seekers, Finders Forensic Audit and Risk Services. She was recently a manager at ESCOM's Forensic Investigations Department, where she survived an assassination attempt for blowing the whistle. Welcome, Dorothy, and may you share your story around your whistleblowing experience, the retaliation that you experienced, and also your resilience. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Devosham. I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone who has joined us on this platform. Thank you for making time to come and commemorate Babita's passing. I'd like to extend my greetings to my fellow panelists who are sharing their experiences here today, as well as the partners that were involved in bringing this webinar together. Okay, from my side, I'm going to share my experiences at ESCOM, where I survived an attempted assassination. I must mention that it was something quite traumatic, because you wake up as a professional going to work every day where you are trying to protect the country's interests from potential fraud and corruption. And you one day find yourself in a situation where you need to choose between remaining silent and you upholding the company's policies of keeping hush about certain circumstances. So what I'm going to share with you today is in relation to what happened in my situation. Let's not forget that whistleblowing, in terms of the Protected Disclosures Act, does not categorize the various circumstances in which protected disclosures are made. So for the purposes of this talk, I'm going to focus on the circumstances in which one becomes a whistleblower as a result of their fiduciary responsibility. The likes of the late Babita Deokaran, who was at the Gauteng Department of Health, Benedict Sitole, who was a forensic investigator at the city of Johannesburg, Mpoma Fole, who was the head of forensics at Ekurhuleni, who recently lost his life as well, and many others whose stories never made headlines and will remain unknown. These brave individuals lost their lives as a result of their profession. None of these people just woke up one day and thought, I'm going to blow the whistle on fraud and corruption today. It was based on the work that they were appointed to do. Now, in the field of forensic investigations, auditing, and finance, we are exposed to information that relate to potential fraud, corruption, and financial irregularities. The beneficiaries of corrupt transactions have become defensive of their ill-derived gains and will stop at nothing to conceal their actions. Now, unfortunately, because of their brazen ways of concealing the corruption, corrupt individuals are not afraid to order a hit or an assassination against somebody. And due to the robust nature of how procurement is conducted in government, it is evident that a corrupt transaction would include various role players. Those that are at higher risk of exposure are the internal role players, as they face potential disciplinary action for their irregular contribution to the corrupt transaction. Now, unfortunately, these internal role players are the same ones that will expose forensic investigators and auditors to the external role players by sharing information about who the investigator is, who the auditor is, or even in Babita's instance where she was in finance, it's most probable that whoever ordered her hit might have been someone within her own organization. And further, employees are normally restricted to expose allegations due to the confidentiality clauses that are in our contracts of employment, forgetting that the Protected Disclosures Act takes precedence over the contract of employment. So sometimes whistleblowers would say, I don't want to blow the whistle because if I do and it's discovered who I am, chances are my employer might take action against me and say, I breached the confidentiality clause. So hence, in many instances, individuals are afraid to blow the whistle. Okay, now fast forward in my case, I had uncovered various incidents of fraud and corruption within Eskom. Before joining Eskom, I was running my own forensic consultancy. I had conducted an investigation that related to a syndicate that was operating within Eskom. Now, this syndicate was responsible for for carrying out purchase orders that was ghost purchase orders, in that they were paid for work that they had never done. And during this time, I conducted the investigation and forwarded my investigation findings to the SIU. As a result of my investigation findings, then the SIU also then applied for a proclamation to probe the issues that I had identified. Now, subsequent to me doing that investigation, I then gained employment at Eskom as a middle manager within their forensic division. Now, I'd rather say, unfortunately, while being there, the same syndicate that I had uncovered while being a consultant was then also identified during my investigations within Eskom. So this syndicate obviously was not happy about the fact that I'm now at Eskom and that more of their corruption would be uncovered. So while at Eskom, I also then discovered that there were numerous investigations that had previously been done against the same syndicate, and yet these individuals were never arrested. So I then followed up with the Hawks to say, we've got service providers that have been identified as being involved in fraud and corruption. How come have you not arrested these individuals? And as a result of that, the Hawks then knew who I was, and they were saying, okay, we will take action against these individuals, but action was never taken. Now, as much as what Sarah had mentioned about her arrest situation, I also then suffered the same fate, in that after my time of exposing these syndicates, I was arrested by members of the Hawks. Now, the reason for the arrest, according to them, was that one of the suppliers of the companies that I had investigated had made allegations that I had extorted money from them. Now, what was strange about this is that that very same Hawks office that I had been making inquiries from about them not acting on information that Eskom had given them previously is the same office that decided to come and effect my arrest. The painful thing about the arrest is that you can imagine you are someone who's seen as a person of integrity. You are expected to be someone who upholds the law, and yet you find yourself now having to be arrested and humiliated in front of your colleagues. These individuals from the officers of the Hawks came and arrested me while on duty at Eskom on a matter that had absolutely nothing to do with me. It was based on an investigation that I had previously conducted before I was at Eskom. So the supplier had made fictitious allegations, and the Hawks decided to act on fictitious information. There was no evidence of me being involved in that extortion. So to cut a long story short, I was detained for an entire weekend in the police holding cell. That was obviously very humiliating. And as much as Sarah has said, the painful part is because you're a forensic investigator, you are normally expected to be the one who makes people get into, I was in holding cells with all sorts of criminals. So I must say that was a traumatic experience. And it was something that did damage me emotionally and psychologically. So fast forward, after that get bail on the Monday, and I went back to work. So what I then discovered while at work, I started being victimized by my own boss, in that he then suspended me irregularly. I was placed on suspension for 9 months, and the suspension had absolutely nothing to do with the unlawful arrest. My boss informed me that the then COO had said to him he must suspend me, and that was his basis for him suspending me. So I stayed at home for 9 months without having proper reason for my suspension. I asked for particulars in terms of why I was on suspension. That was never forthcoming. I stayed at home for 9 months. After staying at home for 9 months, my then boss decided to bring me back to work. During my suspension, there was no interview that was held with me by anyone conducting an investigation. I was just simply told to come back to work. Now, when I got back to work, I then discovered that the same service providers that I had blocked for getting irregular contracts with Eskom had been unblocked using my laptop while I was on suspension. So what I then did is I then started challenging my suspension. And on that basis, I think that's why I ended up being targeted by the syndicate as well as the alleged boss. Now, how this hitman story came about, I was in Mpumalanga to drop off my son at boarding school. And in the middle of the night, I saw a vehicle that had a dark window frame, and this vehicle had stopped next to me at the traffic lights. Now, as the window of this vehicle started going down, I saw blue lights coming. For me at that time, I was unaware that there was a potential hit on me. I just felt it's a safety issue. Here's a vehicle that looks suspicious. Okay, I'm now comfortable by the fact that there's a police vehicle that's nearby. And when those robots opened, I then sped off. And luckily that vehicle was not able to catch up with me. So what then happened is a month after that incident at the robots, I got a call from a man who identified himself as a hitman. He mentioned to me what his name was, and we then later discovered that he did actually give me the correct name. And this individual told me that he had been ordered to assassinate me, and the people that had ordered my assassination was the Eskom suppliers together with my boss. And he then said to me, because he was unable to complete the job, these individuals have not paid him. And that if I pay him, he will go and assassinate them in return. So as a result of this, I was obviously afraid. I informed Eskom of what had transpired. And at that time, I was hoping that Eskom would either offer me protection or probe further into who this hitman is, and as well as his allegations. Because during that conversation with him, I did record the conversation. Immediately when he mentioned the story of the Mpumalanga incident, where he said, I was at the robots with you, I was in a white vehicle with tinted windows, I then realized that this individual was not waffling or was not just scaring me. I realized that my life was indeed under threat. So this particular hitman was identified later as Prince Gift Mdluli. He is a well-known criminal. Do feel free to Google him because I do refuse to keep quiet about this, because after having made authorities aware of who the hitman is, nothing has actually happened to him. He has been arrested for other crimes, for example, for committing a heist in Mpumalanga, and as well recently assassinating a colonel within the police in the Mpumalanga region. And he's been placed under arrest for those issues, and not in relation to my attempted assassination, and also the extortion that he had put me through. Now, what is interesting to note is the involvement
Dorothy,
of
can
my
you
boss.
please round up? Can you please
Okay.
round up?
Sorry, yeah, I know it's an extremely long story, but now what is important to note is that my boss, who was involved with the alleged attempted assassination, was never called to account for his actions. And this, for me, shows that in South Africa, the plight of whistleblowers is left unattended to. It is a quite lonely place to find yourself in. And I feel that regulations do not describe how to protect whistleblowers from occupational detriment or actually being kept safe from further victimization. So I commend the likes of Babita Deokaran. It's unfortunate that she has lost her life, but we do wish that there will be justice and that her assassination, the people who ordered her assassination, will be brought to book. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dorothy, for sharing your experience. And we all salute you. And thank you for being the brave whistleblower in South Africa. We have the next speaker, which is Prof. Halima Kanute, is a pioneering academic, strategist, and author with over 2 decades of leadership experience in governance and capacity development. She was the first female human resource manager at the National Parliament of South Africa and continues to break new ground in advancing women leadership. Over to you, Prof.
A very good afternoon, and I'm really touched, distinguished guests, colleagues, and fellow champions of integrity. I'm really touched and honored to be part of this important occasion as we gather to actually talk openly and, of course, celebrate the spirit of women like Babita Deokaran, who embody courage, resilience, and the unwavering commitment of truth. I think for me, as a capacity builder within the government institution, when we speak of empowerment, we often imagine giving women skills, resources, or opportunities. But for women who step into the difficult role of being a whistleblower, empowerment takes on a deeper, a more urgent meaning, as we have heard by former speakers. And more importantly, it's about safeguarding their dignity and their future when they dare to confront powerful forces of corruption, abuse, and injustice. I think for me, it's all about understanding the whistleblower's challenge, and more specifically, being a woman, because women whistleblowers face a double burden, in my opinion. They are confronted not only with institutional retaliation, but also with gender backlash, being dismissed, silenced, or labeled as a troublemaker. And I think, being in the forefront of strategic positions, one has indirectly been a victim of having to speak out on the truth. And this often is wavered by your opinion being dampened more than anything. And for me, I need to then really present what empowerment really means to women. Because in most instances, to empower women whistleblowers is not simply to encourage them to speak. It is to ensure that they do speak, and whilst they are doing the speaking, they are not alone. It means that they have to have the protection that they require. We speak about legal protection because that is in the forefront of any wrongdoing. You need to be protected legally, and you need to be equipped with knowledge in terms of the rights and access to strong, enforceable protection, which our law provides. Well, many say, is it enough? And we have seen that on its own is, in fact, not enough. It's a notion of willpower. In government functioning, we often say, but where's the willpower? Because we have the resources. Now, that is the other element which I've heard the brother of speaking about in terms of the willpower from the leadership. And also the issue of networks of solidarity for me becomes important, because women should not stand alone. You know, the action of peer support and mentorship makes resistance safer and stronger, because then people get to understand that there is a force behind this resilience. And of course, there becomes the economic component. I mean, in some instances, those that have the economic ability to put extra security around themselves do so. But how many of us do have that? The issue of psychological support in terms of a healing cycle, because being able to stand up against forces of corruption has never been an easy task. And I think once you've conditioned yourself to walk that path, you need the support in terms of counseling and the recognition to recover whilst you are going through that, because every step becomes a trauma. And for you to take the next step, you almost sigh and think, do I really have the courage? And therefore, the continuous holding of hand and the support psychologically becomes almost important. Within institutions of government, there are built-in wellness components, but the question is yet to be understood whether that is indeed enough, because the visibility and recognition is what should change the narrative of so that whistleblowers are not seen as outcasts, but as heroines of integrity. So it's more about internalizing and more unlearning to understand that the components we are confronted with are of importance. And this is a narrative that should be institutionalized, if anything. And some strategic examples I've heard that they've already been made is that, for instance, in Kenya, women leadership circles provide safe spaces for accountability, where collective voices reduce individual vulnerability. And this for us has come through in some of the policies that are actually existing, where women have their own caucuses and are able to speak about their challenges openly. And global figures like Frances Haugen remind us, with legal backing and public visibility, one woman's voice can reshape an entire institution. These examples sometimes we have to try and draw from, because they teach us that community must step in. And today we are doing just that by actually keeping the momentum alive of Babita, to show that what has happened should not happen to anyone, and to encourage those who want to come forward. In terms of being able to document, which has been some of the key findings in the research that has been undertaken as to why sometimes there is the repercussion to the whistleblower in terms of them having to be protected, or even the case being as solid as it should, is the documenting of the components that would build resistance in terms of what they present. The use of secure, credible channels to report wrongdoing. And we know these days that, there is the crypto component, which often people associated with finance, but crypto or encrypting is another way of having to get information in the open without really knowing its source. And of course, it requires skills. And these are some of the IT and AI skills that are embodied by some of the institutions which want to champion on ensuring that whistleblowers are indeed protected. And above all, the anchoring yourself in purpose as a whistleblower, in terms of you are not defending yourself, but of course you are defending the better good, as we have seen in the case of Babita. And the resilience after the whistleblowing. We've heard some of the women on platform here who have spoken out their plight, their trauma, and of course, the aftermath, meaning that resilience does not mean simply enduring. It means transforming pain into power. It is about reclaiming one's voice in terms of continuing to lead and shaping the system that once tried to silence you. I think for me, women blowers are not victims of circumstance. They are catalysts of change. And that, for us, is something that we really need to bring high on the agenda. In honoring Babita today, I think we must not only mourn her loss, but also commit to building a world where women of integrity are not punished for their courage, but celebrated, protected, and empowered. Because in order for us to empower women whistleblowers, it shouldn't just be to protect individuals. It is to safeguard our very democracy that we've fought hard for as a country, and safeguard justice and the moral fabric of our societies. You know, when I was actually reading through and trying to understand how best I can channel some of the information that I would want to present, I saw myself as a writer also just putting together a poem which we read at our women's engagement because I felt it was also relevant that we extend what needs to be done within this month in celebrating her as a woman. And I would read this just to affirm what we are here about, and just to put high in this platform the celebrating of her life as she lived it. She stood where resilience was demanded, but her spirit refused to be still. With steady hands, she carried the truth, a lantern against the shadows of corruption. They thought they could silence her, yet her voice became an echo, carried by every woman who dares to say enough. Babita, your name is not lost. It rises in every act of courage. It breathes in every woman who chooses integrity over fear, justice over resilience. You are more than memory. You are a seed planted in the soil of sacrifice, growing into a forest of resilience. And so today we declare, Watinda umfazi ofana no Babita, Watinda imbogote. You'd strike a woman like Babita, you've struck a rock that echoes on. You struck Babita, but you awakened a nation of unbreakable women. I saw myself writing this because I often also express myself through literature. And I really hope that as we have started this agenda of championing women who want to stand fast in pronouncing on the ills within our government corridors, because that's where most of it culminates, we would hold the lantern high and continue lighting it to show that those that come after that there is a way. It might be a tunnel that we don't see an end towards, but we certainly are seeing an exposure of some sort of light, and we walk towards it hoping to reveal the fullness of the light that we need to be in. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you, Prof. That was really powerful and really emotional to the women out there who have become whistleblowers, and they're courageous, fight against injustices in our country. To sum up, I think the message is that there needs to be specific gender policies for whistleblowing. We need to collaborate with the youth, with men, with women, with whistleblowers out there, with civil society organizations and law enforcement agency to try and address the whistleblowing dilemma that we have in our country. I would like to open up to a Q&A session now. If possible, the panel members can put up their cameras and I will pose certain questions. We have received a question from Sikulelo, who is a student of the Advanced Diploma in Public Accountancy, Public Accountability at Stellenbosch University. Panelists, can you please put in on your camera? And this question is posed to Rakesh. The first question. Rakesh, losing a sister so brave must be very heavy. What keeps you going when you think about the sacrifices Babita made? And the second question to Rakesh. If Babita were here today, what do you think she would want to remember most about her fight for honesty and fairness?
What you
Over
would
to you,
have wanted,
Rakesh.
what you would have wanted was for our generation, the future generation, to go forward in life. That is. She stood with integrity, and there's only one word that would have integrity. Just live it, and you'll be good.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
that is what
Rakesh.
we stood for.
Thank you. Prof. Halima, you've broken barriers as a woman leader. What kept you believing in yourself when the road was not easy? What does Babita's story remind us about the kind of South Africa we should be building for women and rights? And girls, sorry.
I think what kept me going was being true to myself and understanding that I'm a public servant. And I think I embody the fact that I'm here to serve the public, and anything that falls outside of that, it's my responsibility to bring it into the fore. And that strategically. I've written about corruption through case studies that I have come across in the work that I do in the municipalities. I wrote about it and I've turned it into case studies of what is wrong and what we can do by applying the law that we have. And these books are now utilized by public administrators to at universities for first-year public admin students, because it tells us about what is there that is going wrong and what we need to change. And for me, being true to yourself, you can never go wrong. You are alienated, isolated, but that at the end of the day, there are those who see what you are about and what you stand for, and that never goes stale. I always tell everyone that people would come and go, people who have more power than you, but they leave you standing strong because your roots are embedded in what is not shakable, the truth, and what we all must strive to stand for. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Powerful again. Sarah and Dorothy, I think maybe you can share this question. Your work often means standing up for what is right, even when it's not easy. How do you find the courage to keep going in tough situations? And from Babita's story, what message would you give to young women who want to choose integrity, even when it feels risky? Sarah, would you want to take it first and then Dorothy?
I'll go first, no problem. I'll keep it short. As I mentioned earlier on, you're never prepared. You don't get a toolkit on how you deal with these things, but you do have a sense within yourself of what is right and what is wrong. And you have to stand with that and be true to yourself. I like to say that I like to walk my talk. And you've got to stick with that. And sometimes it's not a popularity contest. And the truth be told, and I think every whistleblower knows this, and forensic investigators, is that when you make allegations against one person, you're fighting a machine, many cogs in the machine that you're fighting against. It's not just one person. So you've got to stand your ground, and you've got to be truthful in what you say, and you've got to believe in yourself, that what you say, and ultimately that the truth will reveal itself.
Thank you, Sarah. Dorothy?
Yes, I'd also like to support what Sarah has just mentioned. In the world of investigators, as long as you conduct your work with ethics and integrity, you are bound to be some way or another protected. And as a whistleblower, all I can say is it's a very difficult decision to make, to come out as a whistleblower by exposing the truth. But as long as your whistleblowing is based on good faith and it's based on fact, then you should be fine. So it's not an easy task. Being an investigator as well, it takes someone with special characteristics. You need to be someone who's confident, someone who's knowledgeable, and someone who's not afraid to stand up for the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Prof. Ndevu, there's a question for you. As someone shaping future leaders, why do you believe it's so important that every university in South Africa teaches ethics, not just as a module, but as a way of guiding how students live and lead? Prof. Ndevu?
Thank you very much, Program Director. And once again, thank you to the colleagues for this experience that they've shared. I think there is a moral decay in South Africa, in society generally. And I think it is very important for us as universities to be able to mold our students and these young professionals as they go to the industry where there is all sorts of temptations and infuse the issue of ethics in our education. So it is paramount important. And we can only do this by ensuring that not only in one module or 1 year of studies, but in all our modules, we embed a component of ethical behavior, the important value of ensuring that you ground yourself, your action in particular values, which are values that are societally shared, which would include honesty, professionalism, accountability, and I think the word that has been used more often today, integrity, integrity, and integrity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Asghar, there is a question for you. What lessons can be drawn from Babita's case for improving institutional accountability? And the second one is, how do we ensure that integrity becomes a norm, not an exception in public service?
Okay. First of all, Babita's case is not an exception. It is one that we are now discussing and one that needs to be pioneered by itself and to be put in a different box, but it's not an exception. This has been going on for a while now. As you have, as the question has said, that what can we do to make this the norm? We have to decide that we want to make this the norm. Like the community must be enlightened in this regard. The community has to come together, of course, with the media. The media plays a big role. Journalists play a big role in normalizing whistleblowers, females and males. It must be normalized. It must become something that we find positive, as the negative aspects of it are still there, which is very very sad, but still we have to stop vilifying whistleblowers, as I said earlier, and we have to make sure that they are revered in the community rather than considered to be spies or traitors. Additionally, sorry, the first question was regarding, if you can repeat the first part of the question, sorry.
What lessons can be drawn from Babita's case for improving institutional accountability?
Okay, the most important, I think, lesson to learn from Babita's case is that we have to enter gendered text into our legislation, because Babita has showed us that what is applicable to males cannot be applicable to females. Females are actually putting their families more at risk than males. Females are putting their careers more at risk than males. Females are the ones who may not have their jobs after they are done with the with revealing or exposing the wrongdoing that's happening in the institutions. And I'm happy that this is happening in a women's occasion, so that we have to celebrate it as a women's occasion. We have to celebrate Babita for bringing us here today, and we have to make sure that not only should whistleblower laws be gender specific. I think all laws must have an understanding that it is different, and they must be gender specific and gender sensitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Askar. We only have time for one more question, so I'm going to ask this for the panel to answer. Anyone can answer this question. How do you overcome the tick box exercise, knowing that it is not a true reflection of what is done? Anyone from the panel to take a shot on it?
If you can repeat the question, I think your connection is a bit unstable.
Okay, how do you overcome the tick box exercise, knowing that it is not a true reflection of what is done?
If I can go, is actually challenging the status quo. Now, if something is written in terms of you having to question it in writing via email, it is a reference, because we want to present accountability. People need to be accountable and not just to tick a box, because each and every one of us, I would talk about the government institution, we have a responsibility to do what we were expected to do, because we get paid to do it. So if people are ticking boxes, they must be called out. There must be consequence management instilled. And the only way to do that is actually write an email, CC it to the minister, CC it to the premier. They are responsible. They are leaders who are put in place to ensure that things happen. Service delivery takes shape. And there can't be people who are there just to push the envelope. So for me, it's easy. Write it out and CC it to as many people as you can, and show the person you are sending it to that you have CC'd it, and you will see the turnaround in terms of turnaround time you will get. So that's one of the strategies that I'm presenting out there to the public. CC the dean, the vice chancellor, CC everyone, and the contact details are there. Every minister's contact detail and office is there online, and the public is actually not utilizing its voice, because even the president's office, you can CC your information for just to ensure that it reaches the highest office. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for that recommendation. I'm sure we're all going to do that now. We're going to be busy with our emails. Dorothy, maybe to close off with a question?
Yeah, I think in response to that question, I view it as, whistleblowing is seen as a tick box exercise. And I would say this because even when people are drafting whistleblowing policies, they never pay attention to how they would protect people who disclose information, how they would protect whistleblowers, for example, from occupational detriment. So in reality, there hasn't been proper mechanisms in place to protect people from such. So there needs to be stringent ways of how to curb this weakness.
Thank you, Dorothy. We have come to the end of the Q&A session. Can I ask a small favor from the attendees to all put on your camera so we can take a shot of everyone? I see that you're looking very, very handsome and very, very beautiful, so we need to take a shot. Okay. Has everyone put on their cameras? And I think we are then ready to snapshot. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we have come to the end of the session, but before we can go, we have Dr. Tobias Naruki, who is a Kenyan policy leader researcher and humanitarian advocate dedicated to Africa's sustainable development, governance, and economic resilience. He is CEO and founding partner of the Africa International Policy Research Center. But before I can hand over to Dr. Tobias, I want to actually hand over to Prof. Pillay to give in a couple minutes of just a small comment, Prof. Prof. Pillay?
Hi, good afternoon, colleagues. Chair, I just want to echo the sentiments of our whistleblowers here today. In this month, August 23rd, when we commemorate Babita, I just want to say to these colleagues, you know, these are our idols. These are our role models. And what they are saying today is about always doing things right and always do the right things. And we so much appreciate that message. We have a number of students that are here. They represent the youth and they are our future leaders. So I also hope that these type of advice will be taken into consideration when they find themselves in ethical dilemmas. I'm going to now hand over to you. Thank you so much. And Devotion, congratulations also being a whistleblower yourself. Thanks.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, colleagues. I am now signing off as the director of this session. I hand over to Dr. Tobias Naruki to provide you with the vote of thanks. Over to you, Tobias.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this very important commemoration to a close, I wish to extend my deepest appreciation to all who made this event so impactful, starting from the participants, drawn from all across the continent and beyond. We began under the steady moderation of our moderator, Devotion Modley, whose guidance gave shape and flow to today's reflections. And thank you to Professor Swell Indefu, the director of the School of Public Leadership, by setting the tone with inspiring words, and Professor Scott, without forgetting you, the Secretary General of APAM, who reminded us that the importance of ethical leadership in public service is critical, not only in Africa, but beyond. A special tribute goes to Mr. Ragesh Deokaran, the brother to the late, our heroine Babita, for his heartfelt reflection on this life and the courage of his sister Babita, the voice that remains in our history today, but it rekindles the fire of the so many voiceless women that have been silenced in many parts of the continent. We also thank our distinguished speakers, led by Ms. Sarah Barker, for her incisive insights from forensic investigations you did to the threats you received. Your courage really inspires so many women out here. Ms. Aska, for your wisdom and the experience in the international law and human rights. Your statements really made a lot of impact in this conversation. And Ms. Dorothy, we also draw from your deep forensic leadership experience that inspired the conversation. Lastly, Professor Halima, for your inspiring account of breaking barriers in governance and women's leadership. Importantly, today we honor all whistleblowers who did not manage to attend this webinar, both known and unknown, either in South Africa and beyond, and they continue to risk their safety and livelihoods for the sake of the truth and justice for our continent in corridors of public service, power, and politics. You are quiet guardians of democracy, and this gathering is as much important as you two, and in memory of our heroine Babita. This event was made possible through the partnership of Africa Association for Public Administration and Management, the African International Policy Research Center, the School of Public Leadership at Stellenbosch University, with a serious initiative led by Professor Pile, whom we appreciate so much for her leadership, in particular, extending this leadership, bringing experts from across the different partners to be able to speak to us today. To all the participants, we can't forget you. Public officials and scholars, civil society members, students, community representatives who turned up to attend this event, your presence and engagement showed a lot of respect and commemoration for our heroine Babita's sacrifice, which was not just in vain, but your presence was a sacrifice that will be remembered. You have carried the day and the legacy of Our Lady, and we call upon you to continue doing the same in your respective places. As we live here, let us hold on the indomitable spirit of Babita and all women of integrity. May her courage inspire us to build institutions that protect truth, empower conscience, and defend justice, no matter the cost. And on behalf of all the organizers, I thank you sincerely for joining us. Together we honor Babita, and together we commit to building a better and more just tomorrow. Thank you so much, and may God bless you, and have a good evening.
I declare this webinar closed. Thank you. Thank you all for attending.